As Sudan reaches 1,000 days of its devastating civil war, aid agencies have issued a grim reminder that it's civilians who continue to suffer the most from the conflict that shows no sign of ending.
Fighting continues across multiple fronts. In Kordofan, sieges have cut off the towns of Kadugli and Dilling, restricting food, healthcare, and access to farms and markets. In Darfur, fighting on the ground and drone attacks from the sky continue, and we have seen long-range strikes on civilian infrastructure far beyond the front lines.
The United Nations says over 20 million Sudanese require health assistance, while 21 million are in desperate need of food. An estimated 13.5 million people are currently displaced, making Sudan the largest displacement crisis in the world.
Today, our call is urgent. First, an immediate cessation of hostilities and real steps towards a lasting peace. Second, adherence to international humanitarian law with access facilitated across conflict lines and protection of civilians, including aid workers and civilian infrastructure.
Overcrowding in displacement sites, a breakdown in services, sexual and other forms of violence, and hunger are just some of the issues compounding the suffering of the Sudanese people.
An all-hands-on-deck process, and in Minnesota we know how to protect one another, and I have been incredibly proud the way our neighbors have shown up for one another. It's been beautiful to see, and that kind of resistance is why ICE agents seem so angry and agitated, because they have never experienced the kind of love that we experience here in Minnesota. And we know that they are going to disappear one day, but we will be here caring for one another and carrying out policy with love here in Minnesota.
Let me be clear. If any law enforcement agent, any ICE agent, is going to come to Philly to commit crimes, then you can get the F out of here. Because if you do that here, I will charge you with those crimes. You will be arrested. You will stand trial. You will be convicted, whether it's in state or federal court. It's my office prosecuting it. That's how the law works. And you will do your time, because Donald Trump cannot pardon you for a state court conviction. Do you hear me, ICE agents? Do you hear me, National Guard? Do you hear me, military? You're going to jail if you commit crimes in the city of Philadelphia. You will be accountable. The law applies to all of you. And I know that there are honest, decent, moral law enforcement officers out there by the bushel, including in ICE. This is not for you. This is for any one of your colleagues who thinks they are above the law.
Why is it so important to you to own it when you have a military presence there, which you could expand to affect the security?
Because when we own it, we defend it. You don't defend leases the same way. You have to own it. If we don't do it, China or Russia will. It's not going to happen. We are not going to have, and I like China, I like Russia, I love the people of China, I love the people of Russia. I get along very well with President Putin, but I'm very disappointed in him. I get along very well with President Xi. I'm going to go over to China in April, but I don't want them as a neighbor in Greenland. Not going to happen. And by the way, and NATO's got to understand that. I'm all for NATO. I saved NATO. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have a NATO right now. But we're not going to allow Russia or China to occupy Greenland, and that's what's going to happen if
This
we
sounds
don't.
unreal, but unfortunately, it is real. And it has left entire NATO stunned and Europe very angry. You're watching Times XP. My name is Dhriti Atri, and Donald Trump is back with an idea so bold, so controversial that it has reopened one of the strangest geopolitical fights on the planet Earth. Greenland. Yes, that Greenland, the icy Arctic island, bigger than Mexico, home to just 56,000 people and suddenly at the center of a global power game. Well, according to Reuters, the Trump administration is seriously discussing direct cash payments to Greenlanders to pull the island away from Denmark and closer to the United States. Wait, it's not aid, it's not investment. Straight cash. Let me break this down for you, the number. The proposal being discussed could offer up to $100,000 per person. Can you imagine that? Do the math. That is nearly $6 billion in total. The logic from Washington? If America pays, Greenland stays with us. This is not diplomacy as usual. This is checkbook geopolitics. So, why does Trump really want Greenland so badly? Because beneath that ice lies power, rare earth minerals, oil and gas potential, new shipping routes as Arctic ice melts. And most importantly, military advantage here. Greenland sits between North America and Europe. So basically, whosoever controls it controls a critical piece of the Arctic chessboard. For the Pentagon, this is not about snow and seals. This is about China, Russia, and the future of the war zone. But Europe saw it very, very differently. Of course, Denmark is very angry. Officials in Copenhagen, they call the idea offensive and absurd. European allies, they asked a blunt question. Is America trying to buy territory in 21st century? Inside NATO, there was shock because this wasn't aimed at any enemy. It was aimed at a NATO ally. And then came Greenland's response. Clear, firm, and unemotional this time. The Prime Minister of Greenland said, let me quote it for you, "We are not for sale. No negotiations, no ambiguity, no deal." Greenland made it crystal clear that it wants cooperation, not annexation, partnership, and not purchase. Still, the damage is done because this idea, it exposes something deeper. America is thinking long-term about Arctic dominance, about resource wars, about controlling tomorrow's strategic routes. And Trump is willing to say out loud what others they whisper behind closed doors. So you know what this really is about? Not money, not generosity. This is about power shifting north. As ice melts, new maps are being drawn, and Greenland sits right in the middle of that map. Tonight's big question, is this just Trump, headline grabber, or the first sign of an Arctic power scramble that will redefine the global politics? Because when superpowers start offering billions for frozen islands, the world should pay attention.
Now to Iran, where nationwide demonstrations against the government continue. This morning, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated America's support for the Iranian people in a social post. And President Trump warned Iran's leaders not to attack the protesters. Haley Ott joins us now from our London newsroom with the latest. Haley, good morning.
Good morning. Despite Iran's judiciary chief warning of maximum punishment for the protesters, the demonstrations show no signs of stopping.
Thousands filling the streets. Human rights groups say at least 65 people have been killed in demonstrations that began in Tehran nearly 2 weeks ago and have swept across the country in response to Iran's crashing currency and failing economy. Iran's leaders shut down the internet on Thursday, sparking fears of a wider government crackdown, despite threats from President Trump.
I tell the Iranian leaders, you better not start shooting because we'll start shooting too.
The president has said that if any protesters are killed, there will be an American response. How seriously do you think the regime is taking that?
I'm sure that has really scared many Iranian officials, but at the same time, it has inspired many protesters to come out because they know that the leader of the world's main superpower is supporting their cause.
The protests are the largest Iran has seen in years.
Is this a tipping point?
Many people have called what is happening in Iran right now a revolution, and we can see different signs of revolution in Iran at the moment. But a revolution usually needs a leader for the revolution, but we do not have that leader at the moment.
One man who could become that leader, Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah of Iran, who was overthrown in the 1979 Iranian Revolution. Based in the U.S., Pahlavi has been encouraging protesters over social media, now saying they should prepare to seize city centers. Pahlavi says he's preparing to return to Iran, to be there if the government falls.
Amid concerns over a potential government crackdown, there are reports of at least 2 hospitals in Tehran being inundated with patients. State media, meanwhile, has called the protesters terrorists. And Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, made a public address yesterday saying Iranians were ruining their own streets to please the president of the United States.
So as protests in Iran intensified, the images of the demonstration and ensuing crackdown are filtering out of the country despite a countrywide internet and international communications blackout that was imposed on Thursday night. Elon Musk's Starlink is now being credited for providing some critical communication lifeline to the protesters, despite networks being officially banned in Iran. The Khamenei-led government has shut down all internet services and international phone calls after the protesters resorted to widespread arson and rioting on the streets. While Starlink has not confirmed that its satellites have been activated over Iran, a number of social media posts that are emanating over Iran over the past week have credited SpaceX, and a number of these videos and images have been independently verified as authentic. There is precedent as well. During the 12-day war between Iran and Israel in June 2025, Elon Musk had activated Starlink satellites over Iran after the government imposed a near-total blackout of all internet services in the country. While there's no official count of the Starlink terminals that are being smuggled into Iran, various estimates put the number to be anywhere from 50,000 to 75,000, a big enough number to force the Iranian government to mandate an official ban. Now, Starlink was outlawed in Iran on the 30th of June 2025. Harsh penalties for breaking the law include hefty fines, long prison sentences prescribed for lawbreakers. And this time around, there are reports of Iran using military-grade jammers to target Starlink's satellites and also to disrupt the network. Now, users need proprietary hardware, including a satellite dish and cables, to access Starlink's network. And the satellite dish is unique and is immediately identifiable. Starlink also needs to enable satellites when they are orbiting over a particular country for the network to work. It does this when it has regulatory approval from the particular country. In cases like Ukraine and Iran, if Starlink decides to enable the satellites, then anyone with the requisite hardware can still access the internet. Now, the dramatic footage emerging from Iran is revealing a spate of anti-government protests spreading across the country. It's the third time in 6 years that Iranians have taken to the streets against the Khamenei government. And just like in 2019 and 2022, it's a privately owned satellite telecommunications company that has kept Iran connected with the outside world. There's not much ambiguity about the utility and the impact of Starlink's services when it comes to the protests in Iran, but it is still a striking reminder of the geopolitical power that is wielded by just one man who can turn on the internet if he chooses to.
Iran is erupting once again, streets ablaze, tens of thousands protesting, and a nation gripped by fear and anger. But now, a dramatic plea from abroad has captured the world's attention. Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's late Shah, has directly called on U.S. President Donald Trump to intervene, and his message is urgent. On social media, he wrote, quote, "Mr. President, this is an urgent and immediate call for your attention, support, and action." End quote. Pahlavi highlighted two urgent crises: a nationwide internet blackout that has cut Iranians off from the world, and the growing threat of force against peaceful demonstrators. He urged citizens to mobilize in overwhelming numbers. This plea comes against the backdrop of Trump's prior threats, including military action if Iran's security forces harm protesters, and the past year's strikes on Iranian nuclear sites in coordination with Israel. Pahlavi is essentially asking the U.S. to step in, now, before the regime can crush the uprising.
My fellow citizens, bravo to every single one of you who on Thursday night took to the streets across our entire nation. I am so proud of all of you. It became evident to many of you that with a massive turnout of people, the forces of suppression are pushed back and you can minimize the possibility of any crackdown. For those of you who had doubts, be with your fellow citizens this Friday night. I call upon the field leaders to make an effort for the mobilized crowds to reach each other so that the numbers grow even larger. I know they have cut off the internet and communications. Despite these desperate attempts by the regime, I know that you will not abandon the streets. Be certain that victory belongs to you.
While the exact level of support for Pahlavi inside Iran is unclear, his name has echoed across demonstrations, signaling a potential shift in public sentiment. He has also declared his readiness to lead a transitional government if the Islamic Republic falls, envisioning a democratic future for Iran after decades of authoritarian rule. The protests, the largest since 2022, reflect a nation on the brink. Millions are fed up with economic hardship, censorship, and repression. And now, with Pahlavi's urgent call to Trump, the international spotlight is sharper than ever. Will the world intervene, or will the regime's iron grip tighten even further? Time is running out for the people of Iran, and one question hangs over it all. Could this exiled prince's plea change the course of history?
It does not tolerate the act of being a mercenary for foreigners.
You can be anyone you want to be, but once you became a foreign mercenary, you started working for outsiders. The nation considers you completely unacceptable. The Islamic regime also considers you completely unacceptable.
This situation, it is directly connected to these specific individuals. That particular fellow, the one who carries himself with such an air of arrogance and overwhelming pride,
he sits there passing judgment on the entire world. He should also be well aware that typically the most tyrannical despots and arrogant oppressors throughout history, from the likes of Pharaoh, Nimrod, Reza Khan, Mohammad Reza, and countless others of their kind, were ultimately overthrown and brought down from power precisely when they believed themselves to be at the absolute pinnacle of their pride and unyielding arrogance. This one too is going to be overthrown.
No. European farmers are on the streets. They are protesting against a major trade deal between the EU and the Mercosur bloc of Southern American nations. From Belgium to Poland, farmers are rallying against the EU's planned agreement with Mercosur. The farmer demonstrations have in fact spread across several countries after the trade deal received political clearance in Brussels. In the Belgian capital, the protesters brought their anger to the heart of the city. The farmers dumped thousands of potatoes onto the cobblestones of a central square and then parked a tractor at the historic Grand Palace. The landmark, usually crowded with the tourists, has become a stage for a massive demonstration.
As we've seen in recent days, Farmers are angry. The Mercosur deal is going through, and it's truly a scandal. We're bringing in products that don't meet the same standards we're required to follow. In Europe, farmers are forced to comply with strict regulations, yet imports are allowed that don't meet those standards. We find this outrageous, not only for fairness to farmers, but also for consumer health, as these products are of poor quality.
In southern Belgium, the farmers blocked major highways near Lonchin using tractors and trucks. In their anger, the farmers also placed barrels along the roads, and old tires were dumped to slow the traffic, causing long delays for the commuters. The similar protests are also taking place in Poland. Hundreds of farmers marched through central Warsaw carrying their national flags and banners reading "Stop Mercosur." The Polish farmers gathered outside of the country's Palace of Culture before marching towards the parliament. In Ireland, several thousand farmers turned out at the Athlone to protest the trade agreement. The Irish Farm Group says that the pact will hit the local producers pretty hard, and the farmers across Europe argue that the deal will allow South American agricultural products into the EU that do not meet the same standards that they are required to follow. The protesters say that they will put pressure on prices and threaten European farm incomes. The EU-Mercosur agreement, negotiated over 25 years, creates one of the world's largest free trade areas. It links the 27-nation European Union with Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay and Uruguay. Mercosur nations gain access to EU markets for agricultural goods and minerals, and European exporters get low tariffs on machinery, chemicals and pharmaceuticals. The EU ambassadors have given their provisional approval after negotiations with member states. France, the EU's largest agricultural producer, has opposed the deal. It has warned that the import of beef, poultry and sugar could flood the market. Meanwhile, the Irish Farming Group says that the deal could in fact allow up to 99,000 tonnes of additional low-cost beef into the EU market. Even though the EU governments have backed the deal, it still needs approval from a majority of the members of the European Parliament in the upcoming months.
American companies will have the opportunity to rebuild Venezuela's rotting energy infrastructure and eventually increase oil production to levels never ever seen before. When you add Venezuela and the United States together, we have 55% of the oil in the world. The United States is number one. We have them drilling. Drill, baby, drill was my campaign. And Doug and Chris, I think we're setting records of drilling right now and taking oil without Venezuela. That's how we're getting the oil prices down. The plan is for them to spend, meaning our giant oil companies will be spending at least $100 billion of their money, not the government's money. They don't need government money. But they need government protection and need government security that when they spend all this money, it's going to be there so they get their money back and make a very nice return. The plan is for them to spend at least $100 billion to rebuild the capacity and the infrastructure necessary.
After the U.S. rattled the world by capturing the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the other dictators must also meet the same fate, hinting that Donald Trump should next try and capture the Russian President Vladimir Putin and end the ongoing war in Ukraine. Trump, however, waved that idea off, saying that of course, is not necessary. The American president said that he has always had a good relationship with Putin, but has expressed disappointment that resolving this war has proven to be much more difficult than expected.
Would you ever order a mission to go and capture Vladimir Putin?
Well, I don't think it's going to be necessary. I think we're going to have I've always had a great relationship with him. I'm very disappointed. I settled 8 wars. I thought this would be in the middle of the pack or maybe one of the easier ones. And I don't know if you know, Peter, the last month, they lost 31,000 people, many of them Russian soldiers, and the Russian economy is doing poorly. I think we're going to end up getting it settled. I wish we could have done it quicker.
On the other hand, the UK's Defence Secretary John Healey has said that Putin must be stopped and this war must be ended. When asked which world leader he would most like to kidnap, Healey said that he would like to take Putin into custody to answer for the alleged war crimes. He pointed to the devastation in Ukraine's Bucha, where mass graves were uncovered after Russian forces withdrew in 2022. Ukrainian prosecutors have said that more than 1,400 civilians were killed in the district, including dozens of children. Now, the International Criminal Court has since issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin over the deportation of Ukrainian civilians, including children, to Russia. Ukrainian and the US envoys, along with a coalition of Kiev's allies, have been meeting in Paris, working through the final disagreements in a US-backed peace framework under Trump's Washington's role has shifted from Kiev's strongest backer to a power broker, pressing both sides to compromise before taking a deal to Moscow. Maduro was captured early on the 3rd of January after the US launched Operation Absolute Resolve. The Venezuelan president and his wife were eventually flown to New York and have since been jailed. And more than 15,000 US troops took part in the operation, with a CIA team deployed on the ground since August last year. An asset close to Maduro, tracking his movement, and passed off the information to the United States. Maduro was captured on charges of corruption and for running what Donald Trump calls narco-terrorism. But questions continue to loom. Will Trump launch such an operation against Vladimir Putin and imprison him?
In the last few days, the Ukraine war has taken a dark and dangerous turn. Russia says that this conflict has entered a sharper and more dangerous phase now. And the reason? 5 settlements, 1 week, and brand new missiles. Hi, this is Navibal and you're watching Times XP. Russia claims it forces capture of 5 settlements across different regions of Ukraine in just 7 days. And at that time, Moscow launched some of the most heaviest missile and drone attacks in the scene in the last couple of months. According to Russia Defense Ministry, this wasn't just another strike. For the first time ever, Russia confirmed it used its new ballistic missiles on the battlefield. The missile reportedly targeted Ukraine's critical energy infrastructure, power grids, heating system, and supply lines for the civilian that depends on. And that's where it gets even more serious. Ukraine says these overnight attacks caused civilian deaths, destroyed homes, and knocked out the electricity and heating in several areas, including Kyiv. Imagine winter nights, no power, and air raid sirens. That's the reality many Ukrainians are facing right now. So, what is this new missile about? Russia hasn't actually shared the details about it, but analysts say that it is designed for the precision strikes and faster deployments. Its battlefields depend and send much more clear messages. Moscow, which is willing to escalate, is not ready to slow down. And comes the twist here. While Russia claims major battlefield success, Ukrainian says that these attacks are also showing weaknesses. Why? Because targeting the energy infrastructure often happens on the ground advancement that becomes harder. It's a pressure tactic, break morale, disrupt the daily lives, and force negotiation. But there's another angle to it. The world is watching closely. NATO, the US, and even countries far from Europe are concerned. A new missile system being used in the active war raises a fear of wider escalation and more advanced war weapons, and that might lead to an entering of conflict era. For young people watching this globally, this matters more than it seems. Wars are totally not to stay local. Energy prices, global security, and even future conflict shape the moments like this. So the bigger question is this Russia's strongest move yet? Or it is a sign that war is entering to the most unpredictable phase? Tell us what you think in the comments.